In a forgotten corner under an old overpass, Sarah, wrapped in a tattered blanket, cradled her newborn daughter, named Danielle. The blanket, thin and worn by time, barely offered protection against the cold wind whistling through the concrete structures. Sarah's eyes, marked by a glint of resignation and fatigue, reflected the harshness of a life that had been anything but kind. "It's going to be all right, my little one," Sarah whispered, trying to infuse a certainty she barely felt herself. Danielle, nestled in her mother's arms, murmured softly, oblivious to the challenges life had already presented her. Meanwhile, Joseph, with his hands buried in the pockets of his worn coat, wandered aimlessly through the nearby streets. His mind was tumultuous with worries about his recent layoffs and the uncertainty of his financial future. The streets, usually a stage for his darkest thoughts, seemed especially oppressive that night. However, as he passed under the overpass, a scene cut through his stream of negative thoughts. The sight of Sarah and the small burden in her arms sparked a flicker of compassion in his heart. Approaching cautiously, Joseph observed the mother and child for a moment before speaking, his soft voice breaking the silence between them. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" he asked, genuinely concerned. Sarah looked up, surprised and initially wary of the presence of a stranger. "We're just trying to keep warm," she replied, her voice weak and trembling slightly with the cold. Joseph did not hesitate. Removing his own coat, he extended it to her. "Here, this should help a bit. Why don't you come with me? I have a place where you can stay, at least until you find something better." Hesitant but driven by the need to provide a safer shelter for Danielle, Sarah accepted the offer with a mix of gratitude and desperation. "I don't know how to thank you," she began, her words almost lost in the wind. "There's no need to thank me," Joseph responded with an encouraging smile. "Come on, it's not far from here." Together, they walked through the empty streets, each lost in their own thoughts about how this unexpected night might be changing their destinies. Joseph thought about how the house he was trying to sell, now empty, could serve as a temporary refuge for Sarah and Danielle. Sarah, in turn, felt a mixture of hope and fear about the unexpected kindness of a stranger. Upon reaching the house, Joseph unlocked the door with a key that jingled softly, revealing a modest but welcoming interior. "This is it," he said. "You can stay in the guest room. It's small, but it should be better than the underpass." Sarah, with Danielle now asleep in her arms, just nodded, her eyes filled with unshed tears. That night, under the roof of a stranger, a new page began to unfold in their lives. A page that promised a dawn not so cold and lonely. As they crossed the threshold of the old residence, Sarah felt a mix of relief and anxiety. As Joseph closed the door behind them, the sound echoed through the empty hall, seemingly sealing an unspoken commitment between the two. The house was modest, with walls that carried layers of faded paint and a carpet that had seen better days. For Sarah, however, every detail shone as if it were an enchanted castle. It was the promise of a refuge, a safe place where she could protect Danielle from the cruelty of the outside world. Joseph noticed the look of admiration and surprise in Sarah's eyes as she absorbed the details of the surroundings. "I know it's not much," he began, a bit embarrassed, "but I hope it will be enough for now." Sarah smiled, a gesture of gratitude that lit up her tired face. "It's more than enough. It's perfect. Thank you, Joseph, truly." He led Sarah and little Danielle to a room at the end of the hallway. Upon opening the door, a space that seemed frozen in time was revealed. It was his late wife's old art studio, with blank canvases lined up against a wall and jars of paints and brushes scattered across a sturdy wooden table. Moonlight seeped through the window, gently touching the objects and giving the place an almost magical atmosphere. "This was her sanctuary," Joseph explained, his voice low and reverent. "She loved to paint. I never had the courage to touch anything after she passed away." Sarah walked slowly around the room, touching the canvases and paint jars with silent respect. Something about that place spoke to her wounded heart, offering not just an escape, but perhaps a way to express everything that was trapped inside her. "Do you paint?" Joseph asked, watching her curiously. Sarah hesitated, a sad smile forming on her lips. "I used to doodle things, nothing serious. It was more of a hobby to pass the time when things got tough. If you want, you can use this space. Maybe it's a good way to..." I don't know. Start over? Joseph suggested, encouragingly. Inspired by the offer and the creativity-infused environment, Sarah picked up a brush, dipped it into a pot of blue paint, and approached a blank canvas. With an almost imperceptible sigh, she let the color flow, her movements guided more by emotions than by technique. Joseph watched, fascinated by the transformation not only of the blank canvas, but of the woman before him, who seemed to come to life with each stroke. As the colors spread across the canvas, the tension in Sarah's shoulders eased. She was immersed in the process, each brush movement helping her forget, if only for a moment, the adversities that had brought her there. "It's beautiful," Joseph murmured, more to himself than to her. Sarah looked over her shoulder, a glow of pride and surprise in her eyes. It was the first time in a long time that she felt not just useful, but talented. As the weeks went by, the art studio in Joseph's house became a refuge where Sarah found solace and expression. Each brushstroke was a step toward healing, a dive into the depths of her own resilience. She experimented with colors and shapes, each canvas becoming a vibrant echo of her emotions and experiences. Joseph, in turn, watched this metamorphosis with a mix of admiration and surprise. He saw not only the transformation of the canvases, but also the renewal of Sarah's spirit. She was different, more alive, as if each drop of paint restored a piece of the woman that had been lost in life's hardships. On a peaceful afternoon, as the sun cast its last golden rays through the studio window, Joseph approached Sarah, who was contemplating one of her most recent works, a vibrant portrait of hope against a tumultuous background. "Sarah, have you ever thought about showing your works to other people? I mean, outside of here?" Joseph inquired, breaking the comfortable silence that had formed between them. Sarah turned around, surprised by the suggestion. "Do you think anyone would be interested?" Her voice carried a mix of doubt and hope. "I'm sure of it," Joseph responded with a conviction that warmed his heart. "Your paintings, they speak, Sarah, and I think the world deserves to hear what they have to say." Encouraged by Joseph's words and the sincere look in his eyes, Sarah agreed to try. In the following days, they prepared a small collection of Sarah's most expressive works, and with the help of a friend of Joseph who owned a local gallery, organized a modest exhibition. The day of the exhibition arrived, laden with nervousness and anticipation. The gallery walls, previously bare, now vibrated with the colors of Sarah's emotions. Guests began to arrive, murmuring appreciations and looking with interest at each displayed canvas. The response was immediately positive, surpassing all expectations. Comments like "incredibly moving" and "deeply touching" floated through the air as Sarah watched, almost disbelieving that the words were directed at her creations. Joseph stood by her side, a proud smile plastered on his face. "I told you they would love it," he whispered to her, offering silent support. As the evening progressed, several of the pieces were sold, not only providing an unexpected financial return, but also validating Sarah's talent as an artist. Moreover, with each piece sold, a part of Sarah's painful past was transformed into something beautiful and valued. Inspired by the success of the night and Joseph's ongoing support, Sarah began to see a future that previously seemed impossible. Together, they discussed the possibility of more exhibitions and even expanding to other cities. "Who knows how far this could take us?" Joseph commented as they closed the gallery, both of their hearts pulsing with the promise of new possibilities. Thus, as they walked back home under the starry sky, hearts filled with new hopes and dreams, the future seemed a little brighter for Sarah, an artist no longer hidden in the shadow of her adversities, but shining under the light of her newly discovered talent. As Sarah and Joseph walked home under the starlit sky after the successful exhibition, the energy of that magical night still enveloped them. Sarah's initial success in the arts had quickly transformed into a series of opportunities that neither of them could have anticipated. With each canvas sold, Sarah's confidence grew stronger, and her identity as an artist began to solidify. In the months that followed, the demand for Sarah's works grew exponentially. Renowned galleries in the city began requesting her paintings, each eager to exhibit the new sensation of the art world. Joseph, with his sharp business acumen and unwavering dedication, took on the role of managing Sarah's rising career. He negotiated contracts, organized the logistics of exhibitions, and ensured that Sarah's rights were always respected. One afternoon, as they prepared another series of works for an important exhibition, Joseph watched Sarah as she applied the final touches to one of her most impressive pieces. "You've really found your voice, Sarah. It's incredible to see how your art has evolved in such a short time," he commented, admiring the work that captured both the beauty and complexity of the human experience. Sarah paused for a moment, brush in hand, and smiled at Joseph. "I couldn't have done it without you, Joseph. You believed in me when I could hardly believe in myself," she replied, her gratitude evident in every word. "It's a pleasure to see how far you've come, Sarah. And something tells me this is just the beginning," Joseph said, his tone full of pride and anticipation. As Sarah's fame grew, so did the number of people who came from various parts to see her works. Her paintings, filled with vibrant colors and deep themes, spoke of overcoming and hope, resonating with a broad and diverse audience. Articles about her work began appearing in art magazines and newspapers, and she was invited to interviews where she shared not just her art, but her personal journey of struggle and triumph. In one such interview, conducted in a well-known gallery where her works were being displayed, Sarah spoke about the impact of her art. "Each canvas is a piece of my story, a reflection of my experiences. I hope that in some way they inspire those who are facing their own battles." The audience listened, visibly moved by her sincere words and the intensity of her works. After the event, many approached to express their admiration and how Sarah's stories had deeply affected them. With continued success, Sarah and Joseph began planning to expand their exhibitions to other cities and eventually internationally. The idea of taking her art to a global audience was both exciting and daunting. But with Joseph by her side, Sarah felt ready to face the new challenges that such expansion would bring. As they finalized the details for the next major exhibition, Sarah's life seemed to finally stabilize at a pace she had never imagined possible. However, even at this peak of her career, shadows from the past still lurked, ready to test the strength and resilience she had shown so far. As Sarah and Joseph prepared for the next major exhibition, Sarah's success seemed to grow each day. Life was finally offering her a semblance of peace and happiness, a well-deserved reward for the adversities she had faced. Danielle, now slightly older, happily played in the colorful shadows of her mother's canvases, growing up in an environment filled with love and art. However, this peace was about to be shaken. One ordinary afternoon, as Sarah organized her brushes and paints in the studio, a heavy knock sounded at the door. Joseph, who was reviewing contracts in the next room, rose to answer it, his calm expression turning to confusion upon seeing who was on the other side of the door. "Michael?" The surprise in his voice was evident. The man before him was a shadow from the past that both had hoped they had left behind. "Joseph," Michael greeted with a crooked smile, his eyes sweeping over the interior of the house as if assessing the place. "I need to talk to Sarah. It's important." Before Joseph could respond, Sarah appeared in the hallway, drawn by the sound of voices. Seeing Michael, her heart raced, a knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. "Michael, what are you doing here?" Her voice trembled slightly, the presence of her ex-boyfriend bringing back memories of darker times. "I came to see my daughter, and I've heard you've been quite successful, Sarah. I thought perhaps you could help me out financially given the circumstances," Michael said, his voice laden with false charm. Joseph intervened, his posture stiff and protective. "Sarah owes you nothing, Michael, and Danielle is just fine where she is." Michael laughed, a sound that was more of a snarl. "Well, we'll see about that. Don't you think a girl should know her own father?" Sarah, gathering courage, stepped forward. "Danielle knows her family, Michael, and you've never been a part of it, not after everything that happened. I won't let you disturb our peace." Michael's brow furrowed, his expression turning dark. "That's not a no, Sarah. Think about what I'm offering. Help me, and I promise you won't regret it." The air between them was tense, with veiled threats lingering. Michael, realizing he wouldn't get what he wanted at that moment, stepped back. "Think about it. I'll come back for your answer," he said, before turning and leaving a trail of tension and fear. As soon as the door closed behind Michael, Sarah felt herself weaken. Joseph quickly came to her side, offering support. Don't worry, Sarah. We won't let him do anything. I'll take care of everything. Sarah nodded, trying to dispel the fear that the unexpected visit had brought. Thank you, Joseph. I just don't want any of this to affect Danielle. As Joseph comforted Sarah, they both knew that the tranquility they had built was threatened. Michael had returned, and with him, the shadows of the past that Sarah had fought so hard to forget. Now they would have to face whatever came next, protecting the little family they had formed against any storms that might arise. After Michael's menacing departure, the atmosphere in Sarah and Joseph's home remained charged with tension. Sarah tried to resume her activities in the studio, but the constant worry now clouding her spirit made it difficult to concentrate on her paintings. The fear that Michael would fulfill his threats and interfere in their lives again was a constant shadow hanging over her. It wasn't long before Michael returned, on an afternoon when the sky was heavily overcast, heralding a storm. Sarah was alone at home, with Danielle at school and Joseph dealing with matters related to Sarah's exhibitions. The heavy knock at the door made Sarah's heart race. She knew, even before seeing, that it was Michael returning. She opened the door reluctantly, finding Michael with an expression even more stern and determined than before. "Sarah, I hoped you would have thought better about my proposal," he started, without even a greeting. "Michael, I already told you I won't help you financially. You need to leave and let us be," Sarah responded firmly, though her voice trembled slightly. "I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. Not without my share of what you've achieved. After all, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't even be here," he argued, taking a menacing step into the house. "That's ridiculous, Michael. You have no part in anything I've built," she retorted, instinctively stepping back. At that moment, Joseph arrived, catching Michael off guard, who hadn't expected his presence so soon. "Michael, it's better you leave now," Joseph said authoritatively, positioning himself between Michael and Sarah. "Oh, Joseph, always the hero, aren't you? But you can't protect her forever," Michael taunted, his gaze dangerously wavering. "It's not about protection, it's about respect and legality. You are not welcome here," Joseph affirmed, his stance unwavering. The argument escalated quickly, with Michael alternating between pleas for financial help and veiled threats. Sarah, despite her fear, stood by Joseph, her determination hardening with each word from Michael. Finally, seeing that he wouldn't get what he wanted through intimidation, Michael left, slamming the door behind him with force. But his last words left a clear threat in the air. "This isn't over, Sarah. I will get what's mine." After his departure, Sarah and Joseph stood together in the living room, the heavy silence between them. "What are we going to do, Joseph? He's not going to stop," Sarah said, her concern evident in her voice. "We'll take all necessary steps, Sarah. I'll talk to a lawyer and see what we can do to keep him away from you and Danielle," Joseph replied, trying to reassure her. The concern about Michael's return and his threats not only kept them alert, but also made them aware that they would need to be prepared to protect not just the home they had built, but also the peaceful future they so desired for Danielle. As they planned their next actions, the distant sound of thunder heralded the approaching storm, both literally and metaphorically. After Michael's menacing departure, the atmosphere in Sarah and Joseph's home remained charged with tension. Sarah tried to resume her activities in the studio, but the incessant worry now clouding her spirit made it difficult to concentrate on her paintings. The fear that Michael would fulfill his threats and interfere in their lives again was a constant shadow looming over her. It wasn't long before Michael returned, on an afternoon when the sky was heavily overcast. Sarah was alone at home, Danielle at school, and Joseph dealing with matters related to Sarah's exhibitions. The loud knock at the door made Sarah's heart race. She knew, even before seeing, that it was Michael returning. She opened the door reluctantly, finding Michael with an expression even more stern and determined than before. "Sarah, I hoped you would have thought better about my proposal," he began, without even a greeting. "Michael, I've already told you I won't help you financially. You need to leave and let us be," Sarah responded firmly, though her voice trembled slightly. "I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. Not without my share of what you've achieved. After all, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't even be here," he argued, taking a menacing step into the house. "That's ridiculous, Michael. "You have no part in anything I've built," she countered, instinctively stepping back. At that moment, Joseph arrived, catching Michael off guard, who hadn't expected his presence so soon. "Michael, you better leave now," Joseph said authoritatively, positioning himself between Michael and Sarah. "Oh, Joseph, always the hero, aren't you? But you can't protect her forever," Michael taunted, his gaze wavering dangerously. "It's not about protection, it's about respect and legality. You are not welcome here," Joseph affirmed, his stance unwavering. The argument escalated quickly, with Michael alternating between pleas for financial help and veiled threats. Sarah, despite her fear, stood by Joseph, her determination hardening with each word from Michael. Finally, seeing that he wouldn't get what he wanted through intimidation, Michael left, slamming the door behind him with force. His last words left a clear threat in the air. "This isn't over, Sarah. I will get what's mine." After his departure, Sarah and Joseph stood together in the living room, the heavy silence between them. "What are we going to do, Joseph?" Sarah said, her concern evident in her voice. "We'll take all necessary steps, Sarah. I'll talk to a lawyer and see what we can do to keep him away from you and Danielle," Joseph replied, trying to reassure her. After Michael's last threat, Joseph and Sarah knew they needed to take more concrete measures to protect their family. Concerned about the safety of Sarah and Danielle, Joseph decided it was time to seek more definitive answers about the recent events that had disturbed their peace. The next morning, while Sarah took Danielle to school, trying to maintain an appearance of normality for her daughter, Joseph met with Johnny, a renowned private investigator in the city, recommended by a friend who had also dealt with threatening situations. They met in a discreet cafe, away from prying eyes. "Johnny, I need your help to uncover the truth about an incident that's been tormenting us," Joseph began, explaining the situation with Michael and mentioning the recent accident that raised suspicions. Johnny, a man with a calming presence and astute gaze, listened intently, taking occasional notes. "Do you suspect that this accident was actually something orchestrated by this Michael?" he asked, his voice neutral yet hiding the weight of his words. "Yes, and that's not all. He's been making constant threats, and I believe he may be trying to harm us in ways we still don't fully understand," Joseph responded, his concern evident in his tone. Johnny nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Let's start by collecting all possible information about the accident, reviewing security cameras in the area, talking to potential witnesses, and of course, analyzing Michael's history. If there's something deeper, we'll find out." In the following days, Johnny delved into the investigations with meticulousness. He began by reviewing the recordings from security cameras installed near the site of the incident. The footage revealed a sequence of events that did not align with a simple accident. A figure resembling Michael was seen lurking around the location shortly before the incident. Concurrently, Johnny conducted discreet interviews with neighbors and acquaintances of Michael, many of whom not only expressed distrust regarding his character, but also confirmed his aggressive and vindictive behavior. These interviews provided further layers to Michael's profile, suggesting a possible motive for harming Sarah. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, Johnny shared his preliminary findings with Joseph. "The evidence is beginning to point in a clear direction, Joseph. It seems that the accident was indeed planned. We are now trying to gather concrete proof that can directly link Michael to the incident." Joseph, although relieved to see that his suspicions might not be unfounded, felt the weight of reality on his shoulders. "Thank you, Johnny. We need to know everything, no matter how difficult it may be." With the investigation gaining ground, Joseph prepared to protect his family at all costs, while Johnny continued to weave the web of evidence that could finally expose Michael's true intentions. As the investigation rapidly progressed, Detective Johnny had spent months meticulously collecting and analyzing every detail, every possible clue that could uncover the true events behind the suspicious accident involving Sarah. Joseph's collaboration was crucial, providing access to information and resources that only someone so close to the victim could offer. Finally, the day came when Johnny summoned Joseph and Sarah for a meeting in his office, a space filled with folders and documents related to various cases. But at that moment, all eyes were on Sarah's case. "We've found something you need to see," Johnny began, his voice laden with gravity that immediately captured both their attention. He turned on the projector and displayed a series of videos and audio recordings. The footage showed Michael in suspicious behavior near the site of the accident in the days leading up to the event. These recordings were retrieved from a security camera at an establishment near the site of the accident. Here you can see Michael talking on the phone and gesticulating agitatedly. "We managed to recover the call recording," Johnny explained as he played the audio. Michael's voice echoed in the room, discussing details of a plan that seemed focused on causing an accident that would appear to be a fatality. "It has to look like an accident. She can't suspect anything until it's too late," said one of the captured phrases, a confession that made Sarah's stomach turn. Sarah felt a mix of relief and horror as she listened to Michael's voice, articulating plans against her life. She held Joseph's hand tightly, seeking comfort in his supportive presence. "Based on this evidence, we can confidently state that Michael planned the incident. Furthermore, we have testimonies from witnesses who saw him in the area moments before it occurred," Johnny continued, showing photos and transcripts of testimonies. Joseph, with a firm voice, interrupted. "What can we do now, Johnny? What are the next steps to ensure that he is held accountable?" Johnny looked at both of them, his expression serious. "I'll forward all this evidence to the police and assist as needed to build a solid case. With this evidence, we can push for a formal charge and ensure that Michael is brought to justice." The meeting ended with Johnny assuring them that he would be by their side at every step of the judicial process that would follow. Sarah and Joseph left Johnny's office feeling slightly lighter, though aware of the challenges they still faced. The fight to ensure that justice was served had only just begun, but now, with concrete evidence in hand, they had a clear path ahead. After months of tension and uncertainty, the news of Michael's arrest brought palpable relief to Sarah and Joseph. Finally, the man who threatened the peace of their family was behind bars, incapable of causing any more harm. It was a victory not only in legal terms, but also emotionally, allowing both of them to begin healing the wounds of the past. On a peaceful afternoon, Sarah was in her studio, the place where she found refuge, and expressed her emotions through the colors and forms on the canvases. With gentle brushstrokes, she worked on a new piece that symbolized renewal and hope. Joseph entered quietly, watching her for a moment before speaking. "How are you feeling today?" Joseph asked, approaching with a timid smile. Sarah paused, setting her brush aside and turning to face him. "Better, much better. Knowing that Michael can't hurt us gives me a peace I haven't felt in a long time," she replied, a glint of relief in her eyes. Joseph nodded, sitting down beside her. "And Danielle, how is she coping with all this?" "She's doing well, thankfully. I think we tried to shield her from the worst of it. Now she can truly enjoy her childhood without the shadows that surrounded us," said Sarah, her face softening as she mentioned her daughter. The days that followed were filled with recovery and reflection. Sarah dedicated more time to art, finding it therapeutic and a way to leave behind the emotional scars. Joseph, in turn, focused on reinforcing the security of their home and ensuring that all legal measures against Michael were rigorously followed to prevent any possibility of his return. The couple also began attending therapy sessions together, a safe space to discuss fears, hopes, and plans for the future. During one of these sessions, the therapist, Dr. Lewis, commented, "You've made remarkable progress. It's important to recognize how you've supported each other through this challenge." "Yes, it was a test for us, but I feel it has brought us even closer," Joseph responded, holding Sarah's hand. "And knowing that we can count on each other, no matter what happens, is the greatest security we can have." With Michael detained and security measures strengthened, the life of Sarah, Joseph, and Danielle began to resume a more normal and happy rhythm. The days were lighter and the nights less disturbed by nightmares or fears. Sarah could finally look forward to the future with hope, dedicating herself not only to her art, but also to the growth and education of Danielle, who flourished in an environment now filled with love and security. As the family rebuilt and strengthened, the lessons learned during those turbulent times remained with them. a reminder of their resilience and ability to overcome even the most difficult challenges. As spring unfolded its vibrant colors over the city, Sarah and Joseph found themselves in a period of not just personal, but also emotional renewal. The fresh air and the rejuvenation of nature around their home symbolized the new chapter they were about to begin together. One afternoon, as they walked through the garden, where the flowers began to bloom and the trees regained their foliage, Joseph stopped, holding Sarah's hands in his. "Sarah, these past months have shown how much we can overcome together. I would like to make this permanent in a more meaningful way," he began, his eyes locked on hers. Sarah, surprised and moved, felt her heart beat faster. "Are you talking about... Yes, about us, about forming a family, not just for Danielle, but a commitment for us. I love you, Sarah, and I want us to be a family officially," Joseph declared, his tone laden with sincerity and love. Sarah, with tears gleaming in her eyes, squeezed Joseph's hands. "I love you too, Joseph. Nothing would make me happier than to do that. Let's build a future together, for us and for Danielle," she replied, her voice soft yet firm. In the days that followed, they began planning a small yet intimate wedding. They wanted something that reflected who they were, simple, family-focused, and full of love. They decided it would be held in the garden of their home, where every plant and every flower now seemed to celebrate with them. While organizing the event, Sarah also dedicated herself to transforming part of the art studio into a more kid-friendly space for Danielle, who was showing a growing interest in drawing and painting. It was important to Sarah that Danielle grew up in an environment that nurtured her creativity and gave her the freedom to explore her own passions. "Danielle, what do you think about having your own little art corner here next to mine?" Sarah asked one afternoon as they arranged the space together. Danielle, with a big smile, responded, "I would love that, Mommy. Can I paint with you every day?" "Of course, my dear. It'll be our special project," Sarah said, as they laughed and planned the colors and decorations for Danielle's little art studio. The wedding, held on a bright Saturday morning, was an event filled with joy and laughter. Family and close friends witnessed Sarah and Joseph's commitment, celebrating the resilience and love that had brought them together. Danielle, as a flower girl, happily ran among the guests, symbolizing the unity and joy that now defined the family. As the day drew to a close, Sarah and Joseph sat together, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. "We're starting a new life, Sarah, a life we chose and built together," Joseph said, a peaceful smile on his lips. "Yes, a life full of love, art, and happiness. I couldn't ask for more," Sarah replied, resting her head on Joseph's shoulder. Together, they looked to the future, ready to face whatever came, knowing that no matter what, they had each other. As the seasons changed and the trees in the family's backyard gained and lost leaves, Danielle, now a lively and curious child, flourished under the attentive care of her parents. Joseph and Sarah, strengthened by love and shared challenges, watched proudly as their daughter transformed from a shy child into a young girl brimming with energy and creativity. On a typical autumn afternoon, with colorful leaves gently falling around the house, the family gathered in the living room. Brushes, paints, and paper were spread all over as Danielle, focused, added careful brushstrokes to a drawing that depicted their home garden. "That's turning out beautiful, Danielle," Sarah praised, observing how her daughter handled the brush with a skill that reminded her of her own. "You've really captured the essence of autumn." Danielle looked up at her mother with a shy and proud smile. "Do you think so? I want it to look as good as your paintings," she said, her eyes shining with admiration and a hint of determination. Joseph, sitting beside them, flipped through a book, but his gaze often wandered to watch the two. "You two are my favorite artists," he commented with a smile, causing Danielle to laugh and Sarah to give him an affectionate look. "And how was school today? Any new projects you want to share?" Joseph asked, always interested in Danielle's many school projects. Danielle began to speak animatedly about a science project involving planting seeds and observing their growth, clearly excited about the idea of learning and exploring. "And I thought we could make a growth journal with drawings and notes. What do you think, Mom?" she suggested, looking to Sarah. "I think it's a wonderful idea," Sarah replied, encouraging her daughter's natural curiosity. We can start this weekend. It'll be fun and educational to see how the plants grow, and you can document it all artistically. As Danielle grew, it was evident that she had inherited not just her mother's artistic talent, but also her father's love for learning and kindness. Their lives revolved around small family projects, nature walks, and painting sessions that not only strengthened their bonds, but also enriched their understanding and appreciation of the world around them. Evenings were spent around the dinner table, sharing stories of the day and planning future adventures. Each of Danielle's achievements, whether at school or in her small art exhibitions, was celebrated with enthusiasm, reinforcing the girl's confidence and sense of belonging. Happiness, though simple, was profound and complete. Joseph and Sarah felt grateful every day for the life they had rebuilt together, a life that, despite its turbulent beginnings, blossomed in love, art, and harmony. As they prepared Danielle for a world full of possibilities, they knew that the lessons of resilience and creativity they passed on would be her greatest inheritances. As the years passed, Sarah not only solidified her reputation as an artist, but also as a central figure in the local community. The small town that once welcomed Sarah now celebrated not only her artistic success, but also her ability to overcome adversity with grace and determination. Sarah's story, filled with challenges and triumphs, became a source of inspiration for many, and she was often invited to speak at local events, sharing her journey with those who saw her as a symbol of resilience. On a sunny spring afternoon, the community gathered at the local cultural center where Sarah would inaugurate her latest exhibition. The event was also a celebration of community spirit, featuring live music, food stalls, and art workshops for children and adults. The streets were adorned with flags and balloons, and the air was charged with anticipation and joy. "Sarah, you've really become an essential part of this community," Mr. Higgins, the mayor, commented as they walked through the event. He looked around, clearly pleased with the community turnout. Sarah smiled, grateful. "I wouldn't be here without everyone's support. This community embraced me when I needed it most, and it's an honor to be able to give something back," she replied, her eyes sweeping over the crowd that had gathered to see her works. As they talked, various people approached to greet Sarah, each expressing admiration for her work and the strength she represented. Children tugged at her hands, leading her to see their own art projects, proud to show their creations to the artist everyone admired. "Look, Mrs. Sarah, I made this inspired by your painting Hopeful Dawn," exclaimed a little girl, showing off a colorful drawing that attempted to capture the vibrant nuances Sarah often used. Sarah crouched down to eye level with the child. "It's wonderful. You have a great eye for colors. Keep painting, okay?" Sarah encouraged, which made the girl beam with a broad smile. Joseph and Danielle, who were also at the event, watched with pride. Danielle, now a teenager, was helping at one of the workshops, teaching other children how to mix colors and create their little pieces of art. "It's amazing to see how she's grown, isn't it?" Joseph said to Sarah, as they watched Danielle interacting with the children. "Yes, she's becoming an incredible young woman. And to think part of it is due to the environment this community helped create. It leaves me speechless," Sarah replied, moved. As the day progressed, the event continued to be a vibrant gathering point, strengthening community bonds and celebrating both collective and individual achievements. It was a testament to the impact one person can have on their surroundings and a reflection of the unwavering support the community offered to all its members. Sarah, looking around, felt deeply grateful and empowered by the love and support she continued to receive, a powerful reminder that together they could face any challenge that came their way. Following the success of the community exhibition and the warm interactions Sarah had with the children, she was inspired to establish a small art studio geared towards the neighborhood's youth. The idea was to create a space where children could explore their creativity, learn painting techniques, and most importantly, use art as a means of personal and emotional expression. On a sunny Saturday, Sarah opened the doors to her new project, the Creative Youth Art Studio. The studio, decorated with vibrant reproductions of her works and equipped with all kinds of artistic materials, quickly became a haven for young, curious minds. "I want this place to be a sanctuary for you," Sarah explained to the bright-eyed children gathered for the first class. Here, you can be who you are, create freely, and express your feelings, thoughts, and dreams through art. Joseph, who had helped set up the space and was now leaning against the door, watched with admiration. "You're doing something incredible, Sarah," he said to her during a brief moment of pause. "You're giving these kids something that goes beyond art. You're giving them confidence and a safe place to grow." Sarah smiled, touched by Joseph's words. "I hope so. Art saved me in many ways, and I just want to pass that on." The classes quickly became popular. Sarah not only taught basic painting and drawing techniques, but also encouraged the children to engage in group projects that explored themes like nature, emotions, and community. Each project was an opportunity to learn to collaborate and respect each other's visions, valuable skills both inside and outside the studio. "Look, Mrs. Sarah, I made this thinking of my family," said a shy girl, showing her drawing that mixed various colors and abstract shapes. "That's wonderful, Anna. Each color and shape can tell a story. What does this shape make you feel?" Sarah asked, encouraging the girl to explore and articulate her feelings through art. As weeks turned into months, the impact of Sarah on the children's lives became evident. Parents and teachers noticed positive changes in many of the young artists, not just in their artistic abilities, but also in their self-esteem and emotional expression. The community began to recognize the studio not just as a place of artistic learning, but as a vital space for the emotional and social development of the children. Sarah, with ongoing support from Joseph and occasional help from Danielle, who sometimes joined to assist with the classes, felt gratified to be able to contribute so meaningfully. As the art studio flourished, Sarah reflected on the legacy she was building. It wasn't just about teaching art, but about instilling values of empathy, creativity, and personal expression that she hoped these children would carry forward in their lives. After months of meticulous preparation and deep personal reflection, the day of Sarah's special exhibition finally arrived. The event was scheduled to take place at the city's cultural center, a spacious venue now transformed into a sanctuary of colors and emotions, encapsulating Sarah's personal journey. Each painting, each piece of art, was a visual narrative of her life, telling a story of resilience, love, and transformation. As visitors entered the gallery, they were greeted by a series of paintings that started with dark tones and gradually transformed into vibrant and warm colors. The first part of the exhibition was dedicated to the dark days, as Sarah called them, with scenes that evoked her struggle for survival on the streets and the loneliness she had felt. As visitors progressed, they saw a transition in Sarah's works, the introduction of warmer colors and lines suggesting hope and change. These pieces represented the meeting with Joseph, the first moments of care and security he provided, and the beginning of a new phase in her life. At the center of the gallery, a large canvas depicted Sarah, Joseph, and Danielle together in a setting full of light and joy, titled Rebirth. It was the centerpiece of the exhibition, symbolizing the core of the new life Sarah had built with her family. During the opening, as visitors pondered the works, Sarah shared some words. With a voice choked with emotion, she began, "Each stroke in this gallery represents a piece of my life, a piece of my soul. From the darkest moments to the days filled with light, each painting is a chapter of my story." Joseph, standing by her side, held her hand, offering silent support. He looked at her with pride and admiration, his eyes reflecting the love and respect he felt for her journey and her art. "I would like to thank all of you for being here today and for being part of this journey with me. I especially thank Joseph and our dear Danielle, who are my greatest inspirations. Without their love and support, many of these works simply wouldn't exist," Sarah continued. The guests applauded warmly, many visibly moved by the works and by Sarah's words. After the speech, as Sarah conversed with visitors, explaining the stories behind each work, it was clear that her art had touched many hearts, conveying not just her personal story, but also universal messages of hope and renewal. The exhibition not only solidified Sarah's reputation as an influential artist, but also as a powerful voice in the community, someone whose life and art continued to inspire and impact those around her. As the evening progressed, Sarah felt a profound gratitude and a sense of fulfillment. knowing that each challenge faced had contributed to the beautiful tapestry of her life, now shared with all. Despite the apparent calm that followed Sarah's exhibition and the strengthening of her family, life, as always, held new challenges. With Danielle now entering adolescence, Sarah and Joseph found themselves navigating a new phase full of questions and discoveries, both for them and their daughter. On a Saturday afternoon, while the family shared a quiet moment in the garden, Danielle brought up an issue she had been pondering. "Mom, Dad, I've been thinking, I want to start my own art project, something that can also help others, like you did, Mom," said Danielle, a bit hesitant, but clearly excited about the idea. Sarah smiled, delighted by her daughter's initiative. "That sounds wonderful, Danielle. What kind of project do you have in mind?" "Well, I thought about something like an art workshop for other teenagers, maybe focusing on how art can help with stress and anxiety. A lot of my friends are dealing with that," Danielle explained, her eyes shining with a mix of nervousness and hope. Joseph looked at Sarah, proud of how Danielle was growing and the ideas she was developing. "I think that's an excellent idea, Danielle. You have our full support. Let's think through the details together. Maybe find a space where you can conduct these workshops," he suggested, always ready to encourage and assist. "Really, Danielle, that's very mature of you. Let's make it happen. We can use the studio to start and maybe even seek local support to expand the project," Sarah added, already envisioning the possibilities. As they planned Danielle's project, another challenge arose, this time related to Sarah's art studio. A series of urban renovations were planned for the neighborhood, which included the area where the studio was located. The possibility of relocating or even temporarily closing the studio added a layer of uncertainty for the family. Sarah and Joseph met several times with city planners and other local business owners to discuss the implications of the renovations. At one of these meetings, Joseph expressed their concerns. "We understand the need for infrastructure improvements, but we also need to consider the impact on the local community. Sarah's studio is not just a business, it's a space of healing and growth for many." The challenges, though significant, did not shake the solid core that Sarah and Joseph had built. Together, they faced each issue with a mix of pragmatism and hope, always looking for solutions that not only addressed the immediate problems, but were also beneficial in the long term for the community. With each challenge they faced, they reaffirmed their commitment to each other and the family they had promised to protect and nurture. The shared strength they had developed over the years proved unshakable, a testament to the love and partnership they continued to cultivate daily. As Danielle's project took shape and the uncertainties about the art studio began to resolve, Sarah and Joseph turned their attention to long-term planning. They were determined to create a future in which Danielle would not only have the freedom to pursue her dreams, but also the necessary support to achieve them in whatever field she chose. On a quiet evening after dinner, the family gathered in the living room with papers and notes spread across the coffee table. It was time to discuss finances and educational opportunities for Danielle. "I've been thinking about how we can ensure that Danielle has every possible opportunity," Joseph began as he reviewed some documents. "I think, in addition to continuing to support her interest in art, we should establish an education fund that can cover any direction she decides to pursue, whether it's art or another field." Sarah nodded, taking Danielle's hand. "We want you to explore all your passions, dear, without worrying about whether we have the resources to support them," she said, smiling at her daughter. Danielle, feeling the seriousness and love in that moment, responded with gratitude. "Thank you, Mom, Dad. I really appreciate it. I was even thinking about some summer classes in graphic design, in addition to painting." "That sounds wonderful, Danielle. Let's look for the best programs and see how we can integrate them into the education fund we're planning," Joseph replied, excited about his daughter's interest in expanding her skills. With plans for Danielle's education well underway, Sarah and Joseph also discussed expanding the art studio. With the urban renovation issues resolved, they decided to add a new wing to the studio that could serve not only as additional space for classes and workshops, but also as a gallery for new artists and students. "I want the studio to be a gathering place for artists of all ages," a place where the community can come and see the beauty being created here, Sarah explained, outlining her vision for the expanded space. Joseph, always pragmatic, added, "We'll need a solid financial plan for this. Maybe it's time to look for some sponsors, or even a business partner who shares our vision." The two spent several nights planning, budgeting, and dreaming about the possibilities. Each decision was made with Danielle's future and the community in mind, ensuring that the legacy they were building would be lasting and meaningful. With the foundation for Danielle's future established and plans for the studio in motion, Sarah and Joseph felt more confident than ever in their ability to face whatever the future held. They knew that with careful preparation, they could overcome any challenge, ensuring that all doors would be open for Danielle to choose her own path. As the sunlight began to fade from the sky, tinting the clouds orange and pink, Sarah's family gathered in the spacious backyard of their home, a place that had once been a symbol of despair, but now radiated joy and tranquility. The gentle evening breeze caressed the trees and flowering bushes surrounding the area, creating a perfect setting for the end of another fulfilling day. Joseph was at the grill, tending to the meats with a skill he had honed over the years, while Danielle helped Sarah prepare a fresh salad at the outdoor table. They shared laughs and light conversation, the kind of simple interaction that wove the threads of everyday life into a tapestry of family memories. "Do you think we put enough lettuce, Danielle?" Sarah asked, as she mixed the bright green ingredients with vibrant tomatoes and crisp cucumbers. "I think so, Mom. But maybe a bit more carrot? It makes everything more colorful," Danielle suggested with a smile, demonstrating not only her artistic eye for the color palette in art, but also in the dishes she prepared. Joseph, watching them from the grill, chimed in with a touch of humor. "Don't forget the dressing. A good salad is like a good painting. It needs the perfect finish." Sarah laughed, nodding in agreement as she added the dressing. "Always the culinary philosopher, aren't you?" she joked, giving Joseph a look full of affection. As dinner was being finalized, the family sat down at the outdoor table under a now starry sky, reflecting on the journey they had traveled together. "You know, sometimes it's hard to believe how much our lives have changed," Sarah began, her voice soft and laden with emotion. "From where we started, the challenges we faced, to this moment, I am so grateful for everything." Joseph took Sarah's hand, squeezing it affectionately. "Every challenge, every obstacle brought us here. And I wouldn't change a thing because every part of this journey made us who we are today." Danielle, listening to her parents, felt a surge of gratitude for having their love and support. "I just want to say thank you. You both are the best parents in the world, and I hope that one day I can be as brave and loving as you both." The three shared a moment of emotional silence, each reflecting on the meaning of those words and the weight of their experiences. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. "The future is a blank canvas, Danielle, and you will have all the colors to paint it. And no matter what happens, we'll be here, always together." And so, as the backyard filled with the sounds of the night and the laughter of the family, they concluded another chapter of their lives, ready to face whatever the future might bring, with hope, love, and determination. The home that once was a place of emergency refuge now stood as a testament to overcoming and happiness. A true home where the past served only as a reminder of how far they had come.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.